Hey, it's Bob Saget's here for you. I don't waste time. I say my name in a sentence. I'm not ashamed. I'm excited because I have a friend of mine on, and it's Lawrence O'Donnell. And it's, you know him from television, The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. He also was a producer and writer of West Wing. He wrote a book I want to talk to him about. He's just one of my smartest, kindest friends. And personally, to my kids, kind to my kids. So we go way back, and I'll be talking to him about it. And what you want to do is, of course, is subscribe. That's what you want to do. Follow, subscribe, and rate and review. And there's a phone number up there that you can go to, or over there. I don't know where it is. And it tells you where you can call me and leave a message. And then I will call you guys on days when I announce it on Instagram Live and on Twitter. I call people, and I love to see how they're doing during this difficult time in all of our lives. And try to keep some humor in it. I don't know how. I haven't mentioned my penis yet, so I don't think I'll be talking about it a lot. So I'm waiting for Lawrence to come in, and that'll happen probably right now. How are you?
So this is the shot. I've used this. I realize I did Zoom once before. I used this shot for my high school reunion in like the end of May. And there were like 40 guys up there, right?
Right.
And yeah. And it was this shot, I remember. And I was just kind of going like this for, like, I didn't have any, I was just kind of rocking and had very little to say,
Were you at an all-boys school?
I was for high school. Yeah, Catholic school. Yeah.
No, nobody touched you? None of the clergy?
It must have been something I said. They I'm telling you, when those stories came up, I pondered it. I wondered, I go, well, what was up with that? Well, because I was around priests all the time. I had them as high school teachers, and they were great, really great men. I was an altar boy, which is the very best thing I have ever done in my life. My achievement scale in terms of approaching excellence, okay, the things in which I have approached excellence. Number one was altar boy. I mean, I was like 10 years old, and it was like, the Pope was on the altar. It was just,
and the world at 10 years old, the world hasn't. You don't know what's wrong with the world at that point.
Right.
You're honored to hold frankincense and myrrh, right? You were doing that.
Oh yeah, all this stuff. And then the other thing I was good in Little League, and that's it. I basically peaked. Whenever you age out of Little League is when I had peaked at that point.
Well, if nobody it touched you in any way, it must have been you were such a good writer even then that they knew you would write about it one day. So maybe
here's the thing. I now know why it didn't happen because
and you were in the room where it happened.
Yeah, I was in the room where it happened, not when it happened. Okay.
Right.
And I know why it didn't happen. And I know this, not from any experience I had in Boston in the churches as an altar boy, but from, it's about 5 or 6 years ago, I guess, my friend, Josh Singer, wrote the screenplay for Spotlight, which won the Oscar, and it was about the Boston Globe reporters digging out the stories about the priests and the little boys and all that.
Amazing movie, right?
Yeah. So Josh, this Jewish kid from Philadelphia, knows more about this, than I do, having grown up in it. And what he explained to me very simply was, and it makes sense the second you hear it, is that these kinds of guys evaluate, who they're going after, and they're going after the most vulnerable. And when I think about it, literally every single kid I knew in my neighborhood who was an altar boy, every single one of them would have punched the priest in the mouth so fast, so hard, like knocked him. And some of them would have beaten the priest beyond recognition when they were like 11, because these were the scariest guys to this day who I've ever known in my life, And I wouldn't have been the punch the priest guy, but it wouldn't have worked. I would have run away. I would have immediately told my father, because I had a father. And what these guys were preying on were the vulnerable kids who lived in housing projects. They had no father. They didn't have the family infrastructure to go back and take on a priest. It would never occur to them that they could, fight with and or object to what a priest was doing because of their vulnerability. So the priests were targeting those kids, which makes it so much more poison and evil to me.
Oh, it's so the most add it to the list of the most horrific things on earth.
Yeah.
But with everything everything is being exposed, so much is transparent now. That has been called out even more now than ever. But that doesn't help people with PTSD that are living through it.
Right. Yeah. And it's, and I got to say, I mean, my weird counterbalance to all of this is that the priests that I grew up with in Boston were the most noble men who I knew.
They were true priests.
Absolutely. But they were also solid guys, and some of them were really tough guys in the way that we kind of, as kids then, needed guys to be tough and strong. And, not all of our fathers exhibited that the way priests did. And so the lost story in that era, especially for somebody like me, is just how admirable these men were. And none of the priests I'm talking about who were so great to me were ever accused of anything. So it's not like they were good to me and they were doing something with someone else. They never came close to being accused.
Well, should we be like everybody else and just make stuff up about them, and as old men just ruin their lives, what's left of it, even though they were great? Because that seems to happen.
No, I mean, I think I'm going to pause now for a second. I think all of my priests are dead. They're all gone now.
I'm sorry.
Everyone that I had, every teacher I had in high school, and every priest I was on the altar with as an altar boy.
Well, may they rest in peace for being good men.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing I didn't prep for this discussion, because I did no homework about priests or altar boys.
Yeah, our conversations have never had it. You're talking to me, so there's nothing. There's no chronology. I'm happy to see you, and I love seeing you relaxed.
So, I'm looking at the little green light on my computer, and I want to look at you. But, I'm a trained...
You can do whatever is comfortable, because if you look, you don't have to look at the green. I know you are.
I feel like if I take my eye angle off of that dot over to you, I guess I could.
No, don't. Look at me, because that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at you because most people are listening to this on wherever they get their podcasts.
Oh, yeah, they don't care.
No, but they can see this on my YouTube page. So... And then we use it for the promotional stuff. So I prove that I know really, really smart people, and we're actually friends.
Yeah.
You're agreeing with that, right?
I'm agreeing. I'm nodding. Yes.
Okay, good.
The listening audience should know I smiled and nodded, and for the record, as they say in court, I said it out loud. Yes.
Because it is awkward for me going through my whole life like this, which is not having a lot of friends as a kid. And then having some, but I would say to people, we're friends, right? And then if there's silence on an audio recording, it brings back memories. I have sense memory.
We're friends, right? Is just the funniest question I've ever heard. It's like, so here's the difference between us. In my lifetime, I've never said to anyone, we're friends, right?
No.
Like, I never wondered. I always knew.
No, you're a confident man. It took me. I'm 64 and I'm still asking.
But, I grew up, the truth is, when I was 4 years old, I had more friends than I had now. We grew up in this giant gang, this giant pack. It was like the Little Rascals, and it was just a gigantic cast roving the streets of Dorchester and Boston. And like right through high school, I uncountable number of friends, because my elementary school class was 50 kids in the classroom, right? 50. And I didn't just know the 50 in the first grade. I knew, 300 kids in that school, and so and you knew them pretty well. We were all bunched together. And so I was always very accustomed to, just having a lot of friends. And I didn't really, in an effortless way, like no one was ever in my school. No one was ever trying to make friends. No one was left out. There was none of that stuff. There was none of that, oh, he's not part of this, that just didn't happen.
I wish I'd have gone there.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, St. Brendan's Elementary School did have some teachings that you might want to raise your hand and say, "Are you sure?
Do we have
really
fact
sure that Jesus was God?"
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually went to Israel and I studied very much. I went with my ex-wife and her parents, and I went through the Via de la Rosa, the walk where Jesus carried the cross, and there was the Catholic version and the Protestant version, and the Protestant tomb looked like something out of the Martin Scorsese movie. What was that? The Last Temptation of Christ, off of that book. But it looked like where, if he was to resurrect, that's where the stone was. It was set deck. It looked amazing. I mean, I was like, okay, I'm seeing the location. I'm getting a vibe. Something. This is good. But the magnificent church that was built in dedication to his walk within the city walls it just was like, well, he only walked a block. It doesn't seem right. And then I don't know, but
Bob, I think if you were God and you only walked a block on, say, Hollywood Boulevard, they'd give you the whole boulevard. Like it'd just like you'd be the only star.
That is like walking on Hollywood Boulevard right now is like the walk that poor Jesus made.
Yeah.
But there's no stars. There were no stars in Bethlehem on the side.
In my
not in Bethlehem. Sorry.
In my high school, which is to say my third high school, because I got kicked out of a couple of high schools. But
wait! Why'd you get kicked out? We've never had this conversation.
Yeah, it was. We were in the first one. The first one, my brother, kind of all my brothers went to this high school. I have 3 older brothers, so I was the youngest one, and so I had one older brother. When I started, there were 3 of us there, but Kevin graduated in that first year, and so then it was just my brother Bill and me there. And it was an incredibly strict high school, incredibly strict. And it started, I think the high school started it did start in the 1960s. And so it was a startup, it was a Catholic school startup in a town that already had enough Catholic schools, okay? So its selling point was, these were brothers, not priests, okay? And the selling point of these brothers was they would sit the parents down, and you got to understand, demographically, the parents are mostly cops and firefighters and plumbers, and there's a couple of white collar guys, not many, like an assistant district attorney, something like that. Few white collar guys, but it's mostly that. And they would sit those parents down, the mother and father, and they would just look them in the eye and say, "We will beat the shit out of your son worse than any other teacher in this town would ever dare to beat them up. We will beat them so bad." And every Irish Catholic parent just, where do I sign? Just sign up immediately.
Please beat my child.
Just sign me up, right? And it was incredible. And they had torture tools and all this stuff, the way they would just think about how to inflict pain without leaving marks.
Torture tools, like a cat of nine tails? Or...
So it's really childish sounding, but if you got in trouble, you'd have to come up to the front of the class and they would basically, smack you in the ass, right? But they would use these weird canes that they found in strange places. Like they found these things that with the whip of the wrist could inflict a level of pain that was indescribable, and you're a high school boy freshman and you want to be a tough guy, right? And every time that would happen, you just reflexively, your body wants to just cry rivers, right? And so you're fighting not to do that, because you got to be a tough guy. And they knew that. And, so, and by the way, let me just say one thing about it. Every single time they did it, we were guilty. They never, ever once punished the innocent. So, and we knew that's the punishment, right? So in that kind of, James Cagney culture, that was all considered totally fair. I didn't know one kid who complained ever about getting hit unfairly.
Could you stop them from hitting you by saying, "Thank you, may I have another"?
No.
Would that creep them out?
No, they would give you another. Yeah.
Now, what did you do? What's the worst thing you did?
Well, so the funny thing is, they had so many rules in that school, like literally an upstairs case and a downstairs case, right? So, and we're like a bunch of unruly gangsters, and so what happened with my brother and I is, it was the end of my sophomore year, I guess, the end of his junior year. The school in the middle of the summer, like right around now, toward the end of July, sent out a letter to about 20 of us. And this is a school that had, let's see, I remember there were like over 300 in the freshman class. There was about 1,000 kids in this school. they sent out a letter to about 25 of us saying, we've thought about it. And we just can't stand the sight of you coming back here. Go find another school. Right? So, and we'd never heard of that, because normally people are getting kicked out of there all the time, but it was because of some particular dramatic event. Like the kid did X, bang, they kick him out that day, very dramatically. And this was like, nah. And so for us, it was really an accumulation of up the down staircases and getting caught skipping school, which we got very flagrantly caught at doing a few times.
But it wasn't like smoking or drinking, or was it?
It wasn't. No, they would have kicked us out if they caught anybody drinking. You'd kicked out for that. If you got caught smoking, you probably wouldn't get kicked out. You might get suspended, but you probably wouldn't get kicked out. And so, then we had to drift off but anyway, the last, what I'm getting to here is the last of my 3 high schools, which was a Catholic school. A very small Catholic school, and a kind of upmarket version of it. The first one we went to cost $325 a year, and this other Catholic school, which by the way was considered, that was high priced in the market.
Yeah.
But the final Catholic school, because at this point, who would take us, right? Was the highest priced Catholic school in Boston at the time. It cost $800 a year. And so at that very expensive school, which only had 50 kids, in a class, in a whole graduating class, I think it was 50 kids, very small high school. We had one Jewish student who was in my brother Bill's class 1 year ahead of me. And he was perfectly happy there. And
there was you didn't feel any racism toward him?
No. And by the way, he was the first Jew that I had met in my life, because in my Irish Catholic ghetto, no one even knew which direction to go.
Am I the second?
Yeah. There was a big gap. But he didn't have to go to religion class, so that was great. We were all incredibly jealous of him. He just got off that whole class, could do whatever he wanted to. And he was on the football team. He was a great guy, and so there was no, there was no friction to it at all. Although what's interesting is that culture at the time, Boston, was a profoundly anti-Semitic culture.
And racist also, right?
Yeah, but
in general,
deeply, relentlessly racist. And what I realized about the anti-Semitic part, at some point when I was in college, I realized that, so the anti-Semitism in my neighborhood is purely theoretical, because they've never met a Jew. It's not based on anything, right? And it never occurred to them that the most beloved guy in the neighborhood, Mo, who was our pharmacist, was Jewish. And that man was loved and just worshipped. Well,
he's a pharmacist. I mean, we all love our pharmacists.
Right. And so that was an interesting thing, that there was a kind of, and so it didn't surprise me over time when that kind of anti-Semitism and, using Jew as a verb and, all this stuff
how I grew up with that in Norfolk, Virginia. It was tough.
Yeah, well, exactly. And at your age, it would be, right? And it just kind of disappeared. And I'd be fascinated to know in Norfolk if where that is now. What is that vibe there now? Has that
I think it's more hidden, but I mean, we know what the country is and wants to, people want to take America back, but taking it back means we all need to unify. That's what it really means. So I don't know how I can change everyone's slogan that hates anyone different, but
you only have to unify to the tune of about 52 or 53%. You know what I mean? This concept of unify has never existed.
No. And when the Beatles were saying all you need is love during other wars, that is the last thing anyone wants to hear right now. I mean, it doesn't seem that Martin Luther King could get out and speak right now. Well, if he was, that's an example. Yeah, he could. He's probably one of the few people.
See, I mean, he could because he always understood the moment, right? And if you watch Martin Luther King Jr. over time, his speeches change, and it was a giant moment for him, for example, when he decided to include opposition to the Vietnam War to what he was talking about. when he did that, it was shocking. Most people didn't. Most United States senators were still strongly in favor of the war, and he was years ahead of them. 5 years later, they were all opposed to it. It's like they couldn't remember like how they got into it.
Right.
And so he was exceptional at knowing exactly where we were in the moment and knowing every single issue, synthesizing every issue that belonged in the discussion. But he's rare. I mean, most people can't quite make that adjustment. They come in at one level on a particular note, and that's it. And
no,
and
he's saintly in a way. I mean, he was a prophet in many ways.
He genuinely is. Yeah, genuinely is. It's impossible for me to bring an ounce of cynicism to him. It's impossible.
And I've been watching. It's interesting to go to the celebrity aspect, but it's not, because that's the C word. I hate that word. You're either an athlete, a musician, a writer, a store worker, a teacher. Well, those aren't noted celebrities, but to me they are. But Muhammad Ali, I've been watching interviews with him, and I don't know if you've been catching any. And he was hated for changing his name, for saying, I refuse to go to the Vietnam War.
Right.
And President Trump mentioned him in his speech at Mount Rushmore as one of the great Americans.
Right.
I think to notably add diversity to his speech, but if Muhammad Ali had heard him mentioned in that context, he would say, please take my name out of that list, because I didn't want to fight that war. I didn't believe in it, and I believe in the Muslim faith. So it's confusing. The world we're in is people's names are being used where I don't think posthumously they would appreciate it.
But, you've just said something that really fascinates me, because I haven't really thought about it before in today's context. You said, it would be so shocking for someone's message today to be all we need is love, because it just doesn't fit with the kind of battle we're in. We're in a battle to, win this thing. And what's so fascinating about All We Need Is Love is it was written in the midst of exactly the same kind of battle. We had the exact same electoral battle going on of the, pro-civil rights, anti-civil rights battle lines, the pro-war, anti-war battle lines. And they were very political and they were very specific, and it was vote for this person and hate this person, and, Nixon's evil. All those things were in the air, but there was still room in the air, thanks to artists, for messages like All We Need Is Love. And so much, when you think of the music of the time, it's so beautiful. When you think of James Taylor, and these songs are just so beautiful, and they're living in popularity at the time, right beside intensely political anti-war songs that are also very, very popular at the time. And so we were able to multi-track our emotions then, and you could have a moment of absolute rage at the machine, and you could have a beautiful All We Need Is Love moment.
And the young bloods come together, Come on, people, now smile on your brother. Yeah. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. Yeah. I tweeted that. Nobody gives a shit.
No one gets it now.
They're too angry. And speaking of anger, we're going to take a quick break. And we'll be back. Okay, this is something I like. It is. Stamps.com. Here's what I want to tell you. As we slowly adjust to a new normal, we still need to be smart about how we do business. And lucky for all of us, there's Stamps.com to make things easier. And I use it, and I like it, because thousands of small business owners have discovered the benefits of Stamps.com as well in recent months. And they've been able to keep their businesses running and avoid the crowds at the post office, all from their own computers. Don't we want to avoid those crowds? I do. You could wear a mask at home, but you get to print these things out right on your printer. With Stamps.com, you can print postage on demand and avoid going to the post office. And you'll save money with discounted rates you can't even get at the post office. Can you get them there? No. There's no discounts there, but there are here. Stamps.com also offers UPS services with discounts up to 62% and no residential surcharges. This is not a small thing. Well, stamps are small, but not when you print them out because you got so many of them. Stamps.com brings all the mailing and shipping services you need right to your computer in the comfort of your home or office. Whether you're a small business sending invoices, an online seller shipping out products, or just working from home and you need to mail stuff as we do, Stamps.com can handle it all with ease. Simply use your computer to print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send. Once your mail is ready, just leave it for your mail carrier, schedule a pickup, or drop it in a mailbox. It's that simple. And like I said, with Stamps.com, you get great discounts too, with 5 cents off every stamp and up to 62% off USPS and UPS shipping rates. Stamps.com is a no-brainer, saving you time and money. Anything that's a no-brainer is good for me. I have no brain right now. I need Stamps.com to mail stuff. I can't go to the post office. I have no brain. Right now, my listeners get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. We're all looking for that. No long-term commitment. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Bob. That's B-O-B. I don't know how they came up with that. That's Stamps.com and enter Bob. Don't enter Bob as a verb, but enter it on the computer. Well, it's still a verb. Just go to Stamps.com and enter Bob. All right, we're back.
Do you want me to have the sip on camera? I'll do the sip. If I do the sip,
yeah. What kind of cup do you have there?
Well, that's Mark Maron's face.
Oh, I love him.
It's from his podcast. It's his
podcast. I love him so much. I'm doing
a podcast. You know, do you have a podcast up yet?
Mine has been up for a while. This is I don't know what episode this is.
No, but you have a cup. Do you have a mug?
Oh, I didn't get a cup, but I think the cup came. I've been on his show. You're only supposed to go on once. I think I did it twice or once and 3/4 and then another half. You know, because this shows how long I've been in show business. This is the Late Show with Craig Kilborn.
Oh, the collector's item.
And right when Craig Kilborn left The Daily Show, this gives you an idea of the absurdity of show business. Right when he left The Daily Show, which is done very well by Trevor Noah, of course, before they hired Jon Stewart, after Craig left, I got a call from my manager, Brad Gray, and he said, The Daily Show wants you to maybe be the host. And I said, I got 2 kids. I live in L.A., and I'm doing America's Funniest Home Videos and Full House. I don't think I can do that. He said, we can make it work, which meant, you know, if you die, you die.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a daily, it is all you do. I mean, it's all you do is your show.
Yeah. Daily. It's, I mean, just anything with the title daily in it, you're dead. You're dead.
And then you try to get into doing it Monday to Thursday, and they don't know there was no news the 5th day. Somehow you did it.
Right.
But the interesting part for me was I would be a different human being. I might have my dick jokes just in a file hidden somewhere, or they would have come out. But I would have had an education in politics and world history from the 12 writers and from the producers that I would have been reading and learning. All it really would be in a certain kind of way is you'd be looking for your material in one place. Okay. In other words, you'd be looking for your material in the news, right?
You know, and because you're doing that, obviously you're learning about all these stories. I mean, before I got involved in politics and government, there were vast sections of the newspaper that I never read. I wasn't even vaguely curious about them. You know, I would never read an article that mentioned the Middle East because I just thought that's too complex. I'm never going to understand anything about it. Forget about it. You know.
Did you go to horoscopes? Did you go to there?
I would go to horoscopes. I'd start there. You know, when you're penniless, when you're absolutely penniless and broke, you start with the horoscopes. Yeah, absolutely. You know,
I have a question. I got to back it up a minute from before. Okay, you have all these debacles in high school. You finally get out. How did you get into Harvard? Didn't they check your record?
Yeah, so I did a thing. Well, first of all the kids should know. In those days, colleges only looked at sophomore, junior, and first semester of senior year. like that. And then they made their decision. They didn't even look at your freshman year. Okay. So my third high school, I did all three of those grades because I pushed myself back a year because I knew at that point my transcript for colleges is a disaster. So I held myself back a year so that they only had to see the 3 years where I was a good boy at the third school. What happened at the third school was, I said to my father, I made one of these deals, that wise guy kids, one of these pleadings that wise guys make all the time, and it's never true. I said, if you let us go to that school, if you can, if you will, which meant him paying $800 a year for that school, and if we can get into that school, I promise you, I will be a good boy. That was my speech. That was my pitch. It was more elaborate than that, but that's basically it, right? And that story always turns out that, the kid does, you do the thing for the kid, and then the kid doesn't deliver on the deal. But I delivered on the deal, and I took school 100% seriously for the first time in my life. And I just delivered on that promise to my father that I would this time, I would not fuck up in this school. I will not do it if you give me this chance in this school. Because what had happened is some friends of ours, some real wise guy friends of ours, who'd gotten kicked out of the high school with us, had gone on to this other school. And they were having a great time. Like they were having a great time. And they said, this place is great. And what was great about it is that the teachers were much more relaxed, which they could be because it was a smaller school. It was a much smaller school. So they didn't have wild nuts in the hallway like us, it was just easier for the teachers to tame and control. And then I was at that point, all the rebel was out of me. I wanted to do the right thing, from that point forward in school. And
did you just want to write? Because you're
no, I didn't know. And when I went to college, I would not take a course if they said you had to write a 5-page paper or a 10-page paper or something. I would only take a course if they said it's an exam only, because I was so afraid of writing and I hated it so badly, and I was really terrible at it. So
this is great for young people to hear, because it is great, hugely significant, because you're. Would you say you're a writer first? Or?
Yeah, that's all I ever say. Whenever there's a line that asks for occupation, all I ever say is writer. It's the only thing I can say.
I put dancer.
Anchorman is just it's too weird. It's just, any occupation.
Well, Anchorman's just the movie, but you could say say journalist. You could say broadcaster.
But any occupation that's played in the movies by Will Ferrell is something you don't want to admit to on any form, right? Like you just don't no. So, but the truth is that's who I am, and that's what I do with my show now. Is I write that show, then I go out and I read it in the teleprompter. But I spend the day writing the show, and for me, the work part of the show, none of that happens on TV. The TV part's the easiest part of the show because there's no writing. Like once I sit down there, in the Anchorman chair, for me the work day's over because there's no more writing.
Yeah, it's just
writing is the egg.
It's the performance, and I must say you're amazing at it, and you comfort me as a friend, but also there. And I've had the pleasure of being in your studio, which one day will happen again.
You know what? That comforted me. To be sitting there in that chair and looking across at you was very, very comforting for me.
I remember that, and you told me that, and I got emotional because I do that. I will say, it's fascinating to me because there's so many sides of this octagon of media, of news, of viewpoints, and I always try to go through all of it to see where the world is at. Do you do that? Do you go over and look at any of at Fox or CNN?
No, I consume as little news as I possibly can because it's toxic. And this version of it, the Trump era, it's just poison. And so it's painful stuff. And
it's very hard to sleep after it. There's
things about it that are particularly painful to me because I worked in government. I worked in the United States Senate. And so there are things that are sacred to me that are violated by these people. And it's an inside kind of feeling. I think you'll notice this, that if you watch much TV and the people who have served especially the ones who've served in serious political campaigns or had serious positions in government, like Nicole Wallace on MSNBC, worked in the White House for President Bush and stuff. these are the people who are most deeply offended by Trumpism in this whole era. And so it's agonizing in a way there's a unique agony in it for people like me. And then there's just the ugly poison of it. Like, no, I don't want to look at another picture of the kids in the cages at the border. I'll do the story tonight, but I don't want to look at another picture of it. It's just
it's all pornography to me. And when I see what we have to see, but I can't watch, which is protesters being beaten or police officers being beaten, or I like justice. I don't want to see people's rights be taken away. I'm so angry and hurt. I feel so much pain in all of it, but I can't watch those images, but I have to. I feel like I owe it to myself as a human.
Yeah. So, I mean,
how do I get through it, Lawrence? How do I cope? Because a lot of people watch the news. They go to bed. They get up the next day. They can't sleep. No matter what network they're watching. Everybody's yelling at the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should mostly. My recommendation would be to I tell you what I'd be doing if I didn't have this job now. If I didn't have this kind of job, if I was still working in episodic television, doing drama and stuff, I wouldn't consume the news at all. I would look at those polls. I'd see, Biden's 15 ahead nationwide. He's 1 point ahead in Texas. He's 10 points or so ahead in Florida. Biden's going to win, and I don't care. Everything's going to end on November 3rd. And now I'd have an eye on those polls, right? Because I come from, the professionals who work with those polls, who know what they mean and stuff. So I'd keep an eye on those polls, and that's the only thing I would bother with in the news.
Some people say ignore the polls. Some people say don't believe it till voting day.
Okay, but I'm just telling you how I would consume the news. Number one, I would believe the polls because they're basically always right. And the polls were right last time. The polls indicated it was very close between Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and Trump. It was always very close. Hillary was ahead in a way that was not outside the margin of error. And so it wasn't actually, according to the polls, it was not surprising that she lost to Trump. The polls said that was distinctly possible.
When you say the polls, I'm not very educated. You don't mean people from Poland.
No, I mean...
You don't mean the polls. It's not like the Ukrainians say that...
Right. I do not, this has nothing to do... I haven't even...
I misunderstood the whole thing. I thought it was Polish people are saying that Biden's got a 15-point lead.
No, and I agree. Then I would agree. Do not listen to the polls.
And I'm bringing back Polish jokes. What a gift.
Agree. I mean, and by the polls, I mean anyone currently living in Poland. I don't think is going to be an expert on this thing.
Can we get hacked? Can the Russians hack us?
Yeah, they can. So, I mean, all you can say about this now is if the election is fair, Biden will win. I don't know what the Russians are going to do. I have no idea what the Russians. I didn't know the Russians were involved last time, right? So,
right.
But if it's fair, Biden will win. If it's not fair, then I don't know what happens. And really, every problem evaporates on November 3rd. I mean, not the people who've died from COVID because Trump didn't respond properly. Those people are, that's lost. But all the other damage Trump has done. He's ripped apart these families that are never going to be reunited at the southern border. He's done that. But every executive order, every change of law, those can all be changed back. We can get sanity back, very, very quickly, by the way. I mean, like really fast.
Well, it's amazing just in my own world, my own little narcissistic life. I wanted to do stand-up more than I ever thought I wanted to do starting 3 years ago because I felt this split in the country and I wanted to, in that room, when I get 1,000 to 3,000 people in a room or even in a club, which I hope to one day go back to next year, I'm moving all the stuff, that people were yelling stuff at each other and it was sad, and then the podcast, I did 2 days in studio and then quarantine hit, hence what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And it just felt like he was the fuse that lit hatred.
Yeah. Well, I'm
not saying anything negative about him. I'm just saying that he was the fuse that began hatred, which was already there.
My surprise about it my surprise about it is not that there were millions of people like Trump. My surprise, my miscalculation is that there were more of them than I thought. I didn't think there were 40 million. I thought there were 20 million or whatever that number
Well,
is.
and a lot of people were really angry over Obama being president for 8 years. And so this is, people wait. And there's the backlash with, I just hate the whole thing, Democrat, Republican. And I just, can't we just be a human being?
Exactly.
Can't people have a discourse?
Yeah.
I mean, you, like a CIA, okay, what I've been doing, and I texted this to you because I saw you on Homeland, because I'm binging with my wife, Kelly, who sends her love. We've been binging all 8 years. At this moment, we have 10 more shows. No, 4 more shows to go, and we're done with Homeland.
Oh, okay.
That has relaxed me through this time.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah.
But that's not a relaxing show.
It shouldn't. It's not supposed to relax you.
That's how fucked up everything is. That's relaxed. I mean, Silence of the Lambs would be like a Warner Brothers cartoon right now.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it's, it basically functions as classic escapist, and so you're escaping from this present day stuff, so I can see how that would work. Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you, because this is me asking you. This isn't like an interview, I don't think, because I'm not good at it. But West Wing, you produced, you wrote it, you were even on it in flashbacks as a father.
Yeah.
The question I have is, how did that even come about?
Oh, yeah. So
John Wells call you?
Yeah. John Wells is all John Wells. It's so, the weird thing about my life, I guess we will call it, is that it has chapters that were supposed to be temporary, that became long enough that it seemed like that's what my life was. So I was a writer, and I was writing in the show business world before I ever went into politics and government. And in fact, the reason I went into politics and government was the 1988 Writers Guild strike, which lasted about 6 months. And during those 6 months, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan of New York, his wife, actually, Elizabeth Moynihan, who was his campaign manager, invited me into his reelection campaign. And I didn't know anything about politics at all. She knew, and he knew. I was friends with them, and they knew that I'm, quote, on strike and I have no income. And they were I took it as they're throwing me this campaign job because they know I'm kind of a pathetic, desperate human being, which I was at the time. And so I ended up doing that. And then when he naturally got reelected with 68% of the vote, as he always did, he asked me to come into the Senate as an advisor. And I just thought, well, this is ridiculous. I don't know anything, advice on what? But I did it. And I never wanted to, and meanwhile, the strike is over, the strike ends. And by the time the strike ends, I'm on the payroll of the United States Senate, and I've taken, an oath of office and all that stuff. And I haven't said a word to my Hollywood agents about this because I just feel that's just going to tell them, oh, good, there's another bum writer we don't have to worry about. We can forget about him, right? So you're afraid of ever telling them something that might make them stop thinking about you. And so I never wanted to tell them. And then I finally kind of had to. And it was really fascinating to me. It was a real eye-opener. They were all much more interested in me, just much more interested in me.
Because you're doing something that truly matters if you can move the needle.
Yeah, they all wanted to have lunch with me. And I think it was mostly just because now I'm not just another schmuck writer in their lineup. I'm this guy who works in the Senate who they can talk to about show business and this Washington stuff that fascinates them. And so I became more attractive to them in that way. But then weirdly, my Senate thing ended up lasting about 7 years. I thought it was going to last 7 months, but it just got more and more involved.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it. It was great.
Do you miss it? Do you wish you had stayed in government?
No. Well, here's the thing. I can't miss it because it's like missing high school, in the sense that it ends, and so what happened is when I left the Senate in 1990, beginning of 96, I guess, the Republicans had taken over, and it was a majority Democrat. Like, we were in power for almost the entire time I was there until the last year. And I had seen what it was like to have the Republicans running things, and it was bad, and now it's 50 times worse than it was then. But my job doesn't exist anymore. Someone has that office and a business card, but the, staff director or chief of staff, as they call them, of the Senate Finance Committee, that person does nothing. And I used to do real legislating all the time. And I would be, wheeling and dealing with Democrats and Republicans and presidents and, getting this thing done. That's all disappeared, and so it's dysfunctional. So there's nothing to miss. It's gone. It turns out I was literally in the very last cohort of Senate staffers who had the real experience. And since then, it's just been this horrific, ugly, dysfunctional warfare that gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Did you go right from there to West Wing?
Yeah, pretty much. And so when
wow, so you were already, you couldn't stop writing. I mean, it was like...
Right. So when I came back out, and I kind of pretty quickly after the Senate settled in LA, and West Wing started up, I guess, in 1999. It was actually like a couple of years after I came out of working in the Senate. And it's funny, because Aaron Sorkin wrote this brilliant pilot a year before NBC agreed to make it, right? So he writes the pilot with John Wells partnered as executive producer. NBC rejects the pilot. They say, this is nothing happens. Why would we shoot this thing? It's just guys in neckties mildly disagreeing and nothing happens. What are we doing? There's no baby dying in the emergency room. There's no one facing the death penalty in the courtroom. There's no cops shooting anybody. Nothing happens. So they reject Aaron's script. A year later, they're trying to get John Wells. NBC's trying to get John Wells, who's running ER for them, their most valuable property at the time. They're trying to get John Wells to make a different show. And John says, okay, I'll make that other show, but only if you make the pilot of West Wing. So John's muscle gets the pilot of West Wing made a year after Aaron wrote it, okay? And then, as you know, after they make that pilot and the network is thinking about ordering episodes, which ones they're going to order episodes, Hollywood sends around that pilot to writers saying, if this thing goes, we want to hire you, right? So they send me that, and it's a VHS cassette. And I watch that show on Cape Cod in May at my mother's house. And I look at it and I'm stunned by a couple of things. One, Aaron had 1 year to change that script, and he did not change a single word. Not a single word. And I kind of
man of convictions,
that.
Right?
Oh, I kind of love that, because I would have been tinkering, like not one word changed, And then Tommy Schlamme, who directed it, just did this brilliant work with Steadicams and brought this thing to life in a way that was a much bigger life than existed on Aaron's page. And then you had these actors some of whom literally I'd never seen before, like Allison Janney, who I'm just sitting there going, whoa, who is she? Wow.
Right.
And they're just, everybody's so fantastic, right? And my agent says, listen, if this show goes, you're going to be the first writer they hire, because I'm the only one with Washington experience. Like, I'm the only member of the Guild at the time, with any Washington experience at all. I've been in the Oval Office in business meetings with the president. I've been in the cabinet room, in real meetings, not stupid tourist meetings, and, not the rich Hollywood contributor, coming in to shake the president's hand. I've been in there when he's made a decision on, how much of a gas tax increase he's prepared to accept, and blah, blah, all that real stuff, right? And so that's the way it worked. As soon as they ordered episodes, I went in to see Aaron Sorkin at his office over in Warner Brothers. And, we just kind of chatted. He mostly wanted to chat about Senator Moynihan, because like a lot of kids who grew up in New York like him, he was just in awe of the guy, because, Moynihan was like United Nations ambassador when Aaron was a kid and all that. And went back and forth from being a Harvard professor to working for presidents and a senator. So, and it was like he never said anything about so nothing really about the show. It wasn't anything. There was no test, there was no quiz. There was in my chat with Aaron, I just don't remember there being anything vaguely resembling a job interview or an evaluation going on. It was
Right.
kind of like, it just felt like we're already doing this. Like,
Yeah.
we're working together. It just was assumed. And I've never felt that in any other situation.
He's so damn brilliant. It's
Yeah. And he was fantastic. And so, I went to work there, and then I left after 2 years, and I created another show for NBC. And then I came back for what was the final 3 years of The West Wing. And at that point, Aaron had left, and John Wells was totally in charge, which was fantastic because he's such a model of how to do this. And Aaron's a different model. Aaron's the model of how a genius does it. And the trouble with watching a genius do it is that doesn't teach you how to do it. It doesn't teach you how to do anything,
right.
Because they don't need the rule book. They don't need anything.
He just sits down and writes it.
Yeah. I mean, we would all, we'd work out story. We would work out, this is what it's going to be, and this is what's going to happen. And we'd spend hours, we'd work out the story. And then Aaron, in season 1 and season 2, and then Aaron would basically go off and write that script. And, we might write a little bit of scene stuff to say, every once in a while he'd ask me to write, so what would they say in this argument about gun control? And I'd just write the argument. I'd just go, and then he'd take it and go, oh, and then he would Aaronize it into, and you'd say, oh yeah, I can see the skeleton of the argument I wrote that he's made way better and funnier. And the actors are like, reveling in it. And,
right.
But I tell you, I remember we were probably shooting probably episode 5 by the time we went on the air in September. And so we'd been writing all summer and shooting episodes all summer. And I remember walking across the lot, the Warner Brothers lot, at the end of the read through of what was probably episode 4. Right. So that's roughly 4 hours of material. And the audience, and I'm anticipating where we are with the audience now. This will be like the first week of October by now, right? When they see this, right? And I say to Rick Cleveland, who was one of the writers, he actually won the Emmy in the first season for writing with Aaron Sorkin. And I say to Rick, so by now the audience is going to figure us out, meaning by the time the audience sees this, the 4th episode, right, they're going to figure us out. They're going to realize nothing happens. They're going to go, okay, this set is really cool. We get the idea. We get what you're doing, but nothing really happens. Thank you. It's been interesting. I see what you're doing, and we're done. And so my theory is, whatever audience we get through the promotion of the premiere, whatever audience we get, will by the episode 4 or 5 give up on us because nothing happens, right? And, nothing happens that is in the traditional vocabulary of hour-long drama. And so then the show comes on, and the first one is a big hit number, but it got massive promotion. And, as you know, especially in drama series, the first episode is usually your highest rated episode because they load it up with promotion, right? And there's no promotion for episode 2, right? There's none, right? So what you always look for is how big is the drop off, right? From episode 1 to episode 2. And everyone's expecting a drop off. And there's a certain amount they tolerate, and they go, that looks like that's not so bad. They went from this to this. That's not bad. This thing might last. The thing that never happens, or happens with ER, it happens with the magic shows, the amazing ones. The second week is higher, right? So that's what happened to West Wing. It's like the first week number was big. The second week number is higher. The third week number is higher. The fourth week number, when Lawrence O'Donnell Jr. has predicted the audience will collapse, that number's higher, right?
Wow.
And so what we have learned, by episode 5 on the air is
that lightning has struck. And
that drama is what Aaron Sorkin says it is. And that's a really, really important lesson, because some of these stories were literally about, will Josh get fired? And the answer at the end of the episode is no. Okay. I mean, compare that to the stakes of any other drama on TV. But if you invest in those people, and if you invest in that moment the right way, will Josh get fired, becomes the most important thing you're going to care about in those 60 minutes of your life. And Aaron taught television how to do that. The theater already knew how to do that. There were worlds that knew how to do that, right? Novels knew how to do that. Fiction did. But commercial television, ABC, NBC, CBS, they would just say, no, like NBC said in the first place when they read that script, they said, are you kidding? There's nothing here.
They want action.
The script is about, is Josh going to get fired? We don't give a shit if Josh gets fired, right? Turns out the audience did. The audience cared.
Do you think a show like that would work now? Do you think they'd want to see? Because they're seeing it in the news. They're watching it all day long.
No, they're seeing something else in the news. They're seeing a ridiculous situation in which drama is impossible, because drama requires stakes, and by that it requires consequences. So, a drama is, I am going to kill Bob Saget. I'm going to go in and rob his house and kill him for his money.
This will be the soundbite, what you just did. Right. This is good.
Well, the consequences include, I might get caught and get the electric chair, right? And what Trump has done is the equivalent of, we go in Bob Saget's house and we kill him and we steal his money. We get caught and everybody goes, never mind, it's okay. Never mind.
Are you saying they didn't like my comedy?
I'm saying, no, but just to go conceptually for the audience that remember it, but the stakes that Aaron created for the pilot of The West Wing is, will Josh get fired, Brad Whitford? Will Martin Sheen, the president, fire Brad Whitford because Brad said something that is mildly offensive to our political opponents? Okay? And that's a serious question. In 1999 and 2000, you might get fired if you said something publicly that might offend the opposition.
Well, nobility meant something.
Right.
It was more subversive if someone was going to do something as dangerous as what's happening now, which is there's no moral compass.
Yeah. So Trump has ruined that concept of your pilot right there, because Kellyanne Conway and all these clowns who work for Trump say things every day that no one in the history of Washington has ever said before, and none of them get fired. And by the way, they frequently break the law when they're doing it. They frequently violate the Hatch Act, which says it's illegal for federal employees to involve themselves in campaigns. And they're constantly saying things on the White House lawn on federal property about Joe Biden and what a jerk he is and stuff like that, for which any previous White House, you would have been fired instantly, because you crossed the Hatch Act line. So all the dynamics that West Wing was using for drama, which were micro dynamics, right? They were very micro. They were, is Josh going to get fired is a micro question. Is Josh going to get the death penalty in Law and Order is a big question. These were micro drama questions, and none of those work anymore in the world that Donald Trump created. So you just couldn't, the audience would look at these things and go, well, of course he's not in trouble. Of course, none of this shit matters, because Trump. So Trump removed gravitational forces from the arena, and it'll be a long time before you can go back in that arena in a serious way.
Well, we need to calm down. And I can't help but feel, we all hear all kind of conspiracy theories. And one that I can't help after watching Homeland for 8 seasons is that he and his little cabinet there have something on every single senator. They know who slept with who's done something bad.
Yeah, that's all nonsense. That's all nonsense.
That's nonsense. That's what I wanted to know. That crap, I don't have to listen to that.
The interesting thing, and let me just say, I no longer, what I'm about to say no longer applies to Republicans. And I especially mean Republicans in the House of Representatives, because there's a lot of crazy people in there who've been elected. Most of them have been elected since I worked there. But when I was working there in the 1990s, what I would say to you is one of the both positives and negatives about it, the negative being it's not a very colorful place, is that the people who are elected to these jobs are behaviorally the most conservative people in the world. They're the kids who never did drugs in high school or college because they knew they wanted to do this for a living. And so they haven't really explored life. And they're very, they're like Michael Dukakis. Like Michael Dukakis, who was the governor of Massachusetts, and was the 1988 Democratic presidential candidate. The worst thing I know about Michael Dukakis is that in his high school yearbook, his stated ambition was to be governor of Massachusetts. And I just thought, that's the most tragic thing I've ever heard. You're supposed to want to be a goddamn Beatle, for Christ's sake.
Right. I want to get laid.
Right. You're supposed to want to be, Jerry Garcia, something, don't tell me. And so he grew up to be the governor of Massachusetts. Now just think about how behaviorally conservative he was every minute of his life in order to get onto that track. The good news of that is they post-Watergate, where the big scandals happened in the 1970s, the people who entered politics after those giant scandals where they saw people go down in flames for corruption, they entered clean because they thought, oh, you can't do that. So they entered very conservative behavior and very strict ethics, that are not necessarily ethically motivated. It's just that they've seen that the cops have a speed trap up there, so they're not going to drive 90 miles an hour, right? And so there's very little. There's very, very little in my experience. There's misbehavior with those people is very, very rare, and we pretty much catch every single one of them who does it. So when you think about some senator going down and scandal or
someone calling someone a bitch,
what the thing that you got to remember,
that's recent.
Exactly.
I don't want kids watching this, and they're watching it and they're learning it, and they're falling on either side of where their parents fall normally.
Yeah, but there's 430 House members that day who didn't call anyone a bitch, right? There's one who
did. I love that. That's what we're missing.
Right. That's my point. And I promise you that every other member of the House thought that guy was insane, and now the Republicans won't come out and say it because they're on his side. Right.
But why? I know that they don't agree with anything she stands for, but why allow that kind of discourse, especially toward a woman? And
politics is it's a very simple thing. It is a culture of cowardice, where the only people who are not afraid are the voters. So the reason you see those,
they're afraid of getting COVID right now. Some of them,
but
40%.
The reason you see those Republican members of the House behave the way they do is because their voters have no problem with it. If that guy's voters said, "We hate you for calling that congresswoman a bitch," he would be crying in his apology. He would just be, but his voters are totally okay with it. 100%.
Yeah. Well, on that really happy note, we'll take one more quick break. We're going to take one more quick one. All right, we're back. These breaks are great.
I would like longer. I get 4-minute breaks, okay, in my show.
Yeah, you do. And I see you, and you scuttle your papers. One time I saw you hold up papers, and there were just squiggles on the back. You wrote down like you sometimes doodle. You did a little doodle, or you were trying to make your pen work, I think.
I was probably trying to make a pen work. Yeah.
I'm not saying I watch your show that closely, but your tie is impeccable. The knot is amazing.
I take the ties very seriously. I don't understand people who don't. Like, it's the only thing you have, right? Like in that particular occupation, the tie is really the only thing you're going out there with, because everything, it's the dark,
Yeah,
jacket.
And you got pants on, right? You don't have to.
I have.
You can't say, because if you're not wearing pants and you're doing the you're giving us the news, that probably makes sense. Actually,
I have black jeans on. And they're black just in case in some weird moment, somehow the camera might pick them up, which is pretty much impossible. So they're black jeans, and you'd never be able to tell that they are not the black pants that go with that black suit jacket. You'd never be able to tell that. But, I was once in the I was in the makeup room one time.
Are they Varvatos? Because I feel like we wear the same clothes.
They're wicked cheap. They're They are Banana Republic, actually.
Wow.
And, yeah,
That is American. Good for you.
yeah.
I think it's American. I don't know.
I'm as cheap as I can possibly be. There's times you can't be, right? There's times when there's no cheap version of that. You're going to have to spend.
The great thing about quarantine is, like, when it's over, I'm just throwing everything out. I mean, I'm literally walking around in things I would dust with.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. I have so many things to ask you, but you wrote a book, and I have to read it, and then I hadn't until I didn't even know about this book because I'm an idiot, but it's called Deadly Force, and you did it in 2018, and it sounds more relevant right now than I can't even, and it really is a result. Would you just talk about it for a minute?
Yeah, well, in 2018, we issued the paperback of that book, which I actually wrote and published in 1984.
Are you kidding? And you pulled an Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah, 1984. And it didn't sell enough in those days to get a paperback edition. And I always wanted a paperback edition. And we finally got one.
So the internet lied to me about the date.
No, that's right. That paperback version was published then.
But the hardback was 1984.
Hardback, the original, and it has new material both at the beginning and the end. But it tells the story of a police use of deadly force case in Boston that happened in the 1970s and dragged through the courts for years. And I was involved in that story, and my father was the lawyer in that story. My father was a Boston cop who went to law school nights and became a lawyer, and then got into this giant fight with his own police department over this killing. And he won, and he was the first time anyone had ever proven in federal court had successfully won one of these civil rights cases against a police department police officer for killing someone. And they had shot, this black man in the back of the neck in Boston. And his widow just came and, found my father, and she found the right guy. She was really lucky. She found the right guy, and he knew what this was right away. And he just went to work on it for years. And so I told that story in the book back in the 1980s, and also created the larger context of the problem of police use of deadly force in the country, which no one talked about. The very first time the New York Times ever had an article about police use of deadly force, it was written by me in 1979 in an op-ed piece, because I had started writing the book already. And I pointed out all of the problems that still exist to this day. I mean, I think it was a few months ago, I tweeted out the article that I wrote in 1979. Yeah, probably in the second week after George Floyd died, I tweeted it out, because you read it, it's like, well, this is all the same stuff. This is all the same. And so we'd never be where we are today without video. That's what changed. George Floyd, that story was happening, once a week all over America every year. And they weren't even controversial because there was no one to contest what happened. It just would have been this guy, lost consciousness, and, he died in his jail cell and blah, blah, blah. And there would be, but because a 17-year-old girl was standing on the street when this happened to George Floyd, and she held her phone up there and she recorded those 8.5 minutes of video that are now the basis of the prosecution. That's the only reason we know this story. And, that whole moment of video entering this picture occurred so vividly for the very first time in Los Angeles with Rodney King. Without video, there would be no Rodney King story. None. We saw the video, it changed everything. And so this subject has become what it is only because of the video, only. It's been happening. It's been happening throughout the history of police work in America. But this video has allowed America to see what has actually been happening, forever.
Your dad is a good man.
Yeah, he was great. He was.
So he's passed on?
Yeah, he's.
The internet lied again.
No, and I
have pictures of you having lunch last week. This is very upsetting.
The paperback, in the paperback version, I was glad to be able to include the fuller end of the story that I told originally in the book, because there were still some legal maneuverings going on in the case by the time the book was published. And I was also glad, because my father is like, the lead character in this book, to complete his story in this book. And so that's in the new material at the end.
I apologize for not knowing that, but when we texted yesterday and you said, how about tomorrow? I went, I don't think I can read Deadly Force tonight.
Yeah, no. You don't have to.
But I want to. And it just sounds like he was just an amazing guy.
So, my brother, Bill, who's a year and a half older than me, said a really funny thing. Because I wrote that book, it came out in 1984. And then the next book of mine that comes out is, I think, 2017, when I publish a book, or 2016, I don't know. I publish a book about the 1968 presidential election. I write a book about that. And
what's the name of the book?
It's called Playing with Fire. And it's the period that most resembles where we are right now, the 1968 election. And I didn't know that at the time, but so my brother Bill reads the new book, what comes out 30 something years after the first book, and he says, "This is really good. I really like this. It's much better written than your first book."
Only your brother.
No, but it's like there's a compliment in there. There's a compliment there. Just, stay with it. There's a compliment.
Well, the worst is when someone says, no matter what you do, if you made a movie, but if you're on television, I've experienced this a lot. Someone will say, I saw you on TV last night. And I'll go, oh, okay. Yeah, I was on TV last night. They go, yeah. And so it's just a power struggle that you're not going to get a compliment,
Ooh.
Do you look at yourself as someone who wants to bring relief to people?
I would like to, yeah. I'll say this, whenever I can, I look at the news and I try to see in this, is there any hope in this? Do you have any hope in this anywhere? And sometimes there isn't, but I, especially, like with the coronavirus, as soon as they started to have little tiny breaks in the vaccine story, a few months ago, first time it would happen, I said, oh, give me that. And I would lead with that about there is this hope. And it was at a time when the vaccine was kind of more of a dream than ever. It was very hard for people to even think there would be a vaccine. And that was an example of me just reaching and putting a lot of emphasis on the vaccine piece of the story at the beginning, and then telling you the horrors. But yeah, it's a conscious thing that I do look for the thing that can give you hope. And it's not always there, but
no, because it depends on how the day unravels and how much we've been lied to. And I just don't want my president to be the person that delivers me scientific news.
He's not supposed to be. He never was before. That's not what the job was.
I mean, I've been snorting Windex and Clorox, and I've got Clorox suppositories. So people, I guess, what year was the Creative Coalition thing that we did together at the 92nd Street Y? Was that 2007?
I have no idea.
Right. So it was when the Aristocrats came out.
It was whenever the Aristocrats documentary came out, because you guys were a panel with Penn Jillette talking about his Aristocrats.
And Matt Stone and Sarah Silverman was there? I think it wasn't. It was Arianna Huffington. And
wasn't everyone in the panel in the movie?
A few of the people. I think Sarah might have been there. I can't remember, but I remember hitting it off with you, and that was kind of when we first connected. And it was really interesting. Oh, some beautiful sound.
That would be my computer.
That makes a nice sound.
I don't know.
Everything about you is soothing.
Yeah, I better not touch anything.
Even your tones.
There might be more computer sounds.
Oh, I'm fine with that. But that was a very interesting thing, because the Aristocrats could not get made today.
No, I was thinking about that today, that very thought. Yeah.
Because it's about freedom of speech is really what it's about. But a lot of people that are out there that are out. Yo, Bob told the aristocrats joke, and they're in a pool in Miami with 90 people right now.
Right.
That was meant to be a joke that George Carlin said, you don't tell this publicly. You tell it behind the trash dumpster outside to one or two people. And it's disgusting. And people ask me to tell it. And I only told it twice in my life. I only heard it once. And it became this sensation. But it was so wonderful to be part of that Creative Coalition event. And they're such a great organization. And so, do you do stuff with them? Do they contact you?
Yeah, sometimes. I haven't in a long time because I've been too busy. I used to do some stuff with them, and they've always been the vehicle that kind of literally delivers Hollywood people to the political conventions. Like to the Democratic convention and to big events and like presidential debates, things like that. And so they've always been the organizer of getting Hollywood types involved and able to see things in a way that they might not otherwise. And that actually gives them, some influence on Capitol Hill because they can get meetings when they're trying to lobby, for First Amendment stuff by saying, we have this movie star who wants to come with us. And then suddenly you get the appointment.
And here they were promoting this film that took 4 years to make by Penn Jillette and Paul Provenza, where the people that don't know, it's the supposed to be the dirtiest joke ever told that Johnny Carson would know and everybody would know, and there's no punchline. And it's just to briefly not say it, is it's about a family that's so desperate that they perform heinous acts with each other to get an agent to represent them. And that's really the joke, is that people would stoop that low to make it in show business.
And the joke ends with the agent saying, what's the name of your act? And they say, The Aristocrats. That's
right.
The joke. Yeah.
Right. And in England, it was the Sophisticates. That's
Yes. And when well told, the punchline lands just like a bomb, just like a nuclear bomb. It's just incredible. I've heard it, in fact, I think it was probably the only time I heard it. Because as you say, it exists, but it's not, everybody's heard it like a certain amount, but it's not in high circulation. But it was from Adam Green, who's the son of Adolph Green, who's one of the great Broadway lyricists of all time, just Singing in the Rain and, just phenomenal guy. And so Adam kind of grew up in that world of old show business, right? And Adam's younger than I am, and I knew him in college, and so he was this oddity, because he was this kid who had stories, about people from yesteryear, and also just, and it was just, you could tell whenever he would start saying something, I knew whether this was something that Adam just learned in the last month that's really funny, or I always knew that his father told him this. Like He just always knew this could only come from Adolph, who was wonderful, And he said, there's this, story, and this one I think he labeled, this is a joke, an old joke, my dad told me, and he did the joke. And that was it. I heard it once, and he was good at delivering that kind of thing. And he, by the way, did not do one of those big build up things. It was it was almost like an industrial size.
Not as graphic, I would assume.
Yeah, but it gets the job done. It's neat. It's one of the shorter versions, but nice and sharp, And the next time, and that was it. And no one else I ever knew in my life knew that joke. Right?
I didn't know it.
No. And the next time I hear about it, Penn says to me, I'm making a documentary about this joke, The Aristocrats. And he assumes I don't know it, because it's unlikely that I know it, right?
Right.
I had heard it once in my life. I knew exactly what it was.
And that's the joke, is the telling of it. And it's like, that's the joke?
Yeah.
But there's different ways to get the point of it. And the point is, we're in a world where that would be the last thing, especially victims of horrific ancestral stuff. Some things you just tragedy plus time, but some comedians let the air out of the pressure cooker by saying exactly what you're not supposed to hear.
That's kind of what was in the spirit of that joke.
Yeah.
Is no one, there was no one telling that joke who thinks you should do any of the things described in the joke.
Correct.
Like that's
no one has approved this message.
Right. It's like, listen to what an idiot this person is. This person thinks, that this is okay. Yeah.
It was just and became filth for the sake of filth for a lot of the other people, and that those people are a little bit unrepresented right now. They don't want to hear it. I mean, they want to hear it, but the world can't take it right now. We're in enough pain. I mean, I don't really, even with me loving to do what I'm not supposed to do because I'm like a 10-year-old boy who says what he's not supposed to say sometimes, I feel more grown up right now. I feel like I have a responsibility.
Yeah. We
to
are.
tell more stories, to have more soul to what I'm doing. But be funny. I better damn well be funny. But
yeah. I mean, the larger thing that I thought the Aristocrats documentary was about was creativity and writing. And I mean, there were things in that I didn't care. There's so much in that documentary where they're not even talking about the joke, that is just so brilliantly insightful, to process in a way that you could never quite, put on paper, that you just had to see a person say these things to you,
and there are people that didn't want, and they were in the film, Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, they didn't want to tell the joke, and they were very well utilized in the film, saying, no thanks. And then Robin Williams, may he rest in peace, said, another joke, it was either you didn't just come here to hunt or it was the frog fucking joke. I can't remember, but he didn't want to tell the Aristocrats, and it's understandable. And he was one of the kings of improv for all eternity. So he would have done it beautifully, but it's not in his wheelhouse because that really wasn't his sense of humor. With me, I went through so much tragedy as a kid and saw so many terrible things that I found it funny because I'd known people that had gone through such terrible stuff as that joke represents. And I think people that laugh at it are people that laugh at, National Lampoon's Vacation. When the girl, Chevy Chase's daughter said, Randy Quaid's daughter says, my daddy says I'm the best kisser. That's what that joke is based on.
Right.
It is based on what couldn't be more wrong.
Right. Right.
Well, I don't know. I have one other thing I thought, because I know the answer already, but I've been watching this Homeland. I've been binging the shit out of it. And everybody, they always try to flip an agent. They always try to take the CIA operative or the person in Pakistan. If we can just flip them, then we'll be able to, the Russian, we can flip him and then he'll work for us. Could you be flipped? Could Fox come after you, offer you the, I don't know paychecks, but the Bill O'Reilly salary, have you come on, and they could then say, look what we've done. We've taken this man from MSNBC and we have made him one of ours. And is that how far-fetched is that?
That's interesting. I would argue that in that deal, you're worth way more than Bill O'Reilly, because of the way you just said it. Because the way you said it, it's like, look, we converted him. I mean, I think a convert is worth way more, than a born believer.
And you'd still be able to get some of your dialogue in, but I mean, look at Chris Wallace. I mean, he's able to do things on there that very few people have that latitude.
Right. But, his job is to be on there so that we will say they're legit. Like, that's what they're paying for.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have Chris Wallace, they're legit. And it's like, okay, so they have 1 hour a week where there's a legit guy.
Right.
and oh, by the way, it's Sunday morning, so don't miss it. I don't watch TV on Sunday morning.
At nighttime, it looks like a wrestling match. I don't know.
Well, I mean, so one of the interesting things about that experiment is that they've already done it.
And I have some really good friends, and that's the network they've got on. And I try to watch it, and then I'll see an occasional thing, and I'll go, okay, that's the truth, I think. And then the rest, I go, what? I can't. It just, it's like people that are like reading prompter and then just mocking everyone. But everybody's mocking everyone everywhere. And the eye rolling doesn't help any discourse with anybody on any network.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
you don't do that. You just don't do that.
you're stuck if you're going to, I mean, I put it, Fox, those people, I think Sean Hannity believes pretty much everything he says. But the others don't. The others do not. And, Tucker Carlson, who's a big hit now at Fox at 8 o'clock, much bigger ratings than Bill O'Reilly ever had in that time slot.
I've met him before. He was charming.
Of course he is.
And he was like saying, "Yeah, I'm just doing this." And
exactly, if he'd be charming. He'd be charming if you met him tomorrow. The money is in going in, and they're making huge money, and the money isn't going in that extreme Trumpian direction. That's where the money is at Fox. And so that's why Tucker's done it. He used to work at CNN. He used to work at MSNBC. He didn't used to be that person, but that person is now worth, look, Bill O'Reilly was getting paid $25 million for lower ratings than Tucker Carlson. So go figure out what he's worth. And
if his penis could talk.
Yeah. So
his penis is writing a book, by the way.
Yeah,
and it's a soft cover only.
I'm sort of just stuck with, I have to get a show on, and all I can do is what I think. If I tried to get beyond what I think, then that writing would be really hard. It's hard enough to write what I think. Imagine if I'm trying to construct some other thing that isn't what I think.
Or just read what's been written for you, and then
I can't do that. Yeah,
that's what I love about you, and I love your show. It's wonderful. Who came up with the title, The Last Word? Of course you did.
On the plane. I got on the plane after I agreed to do this show, and actually, we kind of made a deal, and I didn't have to do it for a few months, so I had a few months to think about it. But once the deal was made, I remember getting on the plane, New York to LA, and I sat down and I took out this legal pad, and I just started handwriting, the Lawrence O'Donnell Show, because it's going to go on after the Rachel Maddow Show, right? So that's the name of the show at 9 o'clock. How creative do you have to be? So option one is the Lawrence O'Donnell Show, right? And I look at that and I don't like it. And there's a weird reason that's kind of fetishistic, but I don't like it. And this will sound very weird because I do not want that much attention. So, I'm going to be sitting there on TV. I can't escape the attention, but I do not want my name to be I want it to be the Tonight Show, not the Johnny Carson Show.
Yeah. You don't want to add the celebrity to it.
I'm trying to avoid, I didn't want to be any better known than I was. I guess I'll put it that way. I didn't want anyone else knowing in the grocery store who I am. I was trying to avoid that. But so I tried to come up with, and so I'm thinking okay, what's a title that isn't my name? And literally the next thing, at that point, it was the last thing on at night, 10 p.m. And I just go, The Last Word. And that's it. That was the entire list of possible titles. And it became The Last Word. And your name goes in the title because that's kind of a Johnny Carson thing. It kind of, The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He sort of established that. So, but I say it's pretty fetishistic to think there's much of a difference between The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell or The Lawrence O'Donnell Show. Like one of those is going to somehow be more of an invasion of me,
right,
than the other one. But look, this is an occupation for crazy people, and so you have those feelings.
Would you say Johnny Carson is the top of the mountain as far as broadcasting goes? Even though David Letterman is, and we have wonderful. I mean, Colbert and Kimmel, and we have wonderful people doing these jobs.
I think they'd pretty much all agree, especially since he's not with us anymore. He's not one of their competitors. That Johnny is the top. Here's what I think he's the top of the mountain of. He's the top of the mountain of a TV presence, meaning who he was when he was on TV. That the person he sent out there to be on TV, which you and I know is a different thing from the person who's at home. It's still the person, and it's a real person. But he sent out there a person who was 100% comfortable being out there. And we actually know he wasn't quite so comfortable at home.
At home or in life and relationships.
But that comfort that he had with the camera, with the studio audience, with the millions of people at home was extraordinary. It was astounding. And one of I think the most important place that you saw it, especially once it was by the time it was the sort of the silver-haired Johnny, and the audience had now known this man for years and years and years and years and years. He would come out, through that curtain in Burbank, where, by the way, I used to do MSNBC hits in a studio a floor above his curtain in Burbank, way back at the beginning of MSNBC. But he'd come out through that curtain. He would not say a word. And the audience was laughing. It was like, oh my God, that's, I mean, you know what that is.
It was almost the beginning of, yo, Johnny, he goes, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
He was incredibly kind to me, and he told me something which I know applies to what you do, because you do your job every day. And I'm on the show, and he put me on quite a bit. And I had so much fun. I guess he looked at me like a nephew or something. And I never did stand up. I always would just sit and talk to him. And I did the first segment, and then there's a commercial break, and he leans over. It's what you dream of. Yeah. My first time on with him, I told him about a dream I had where he was driving a limo, and Buddy Hackett, Buddy Rich, and Buddy Ebsen were in the back seat. And we drove into a ditch, and we covered in water. And I said, "I saved you first, Johnny." And he goes, "Thank you very much." And then anyway, but the point was, I would sit there and I would say stuff to him like, "This story's true," and he would say, "I don't care, just tell it." And David Letterman did the same thing. He inherited so much of those qualities. I would say to David on his show, this is true. He says, "I don't give a crap. Just get to it." Right. But that was the relationship, which is my personality with theirs, which fit at the time. And Johnny, I do a segment, go to commercial, and he says, "Sorry about the audience tonight. They're not very good." And I said, I thought they were okay. I thought I did okay. He goes, "You did better than okay. They should have been screaming at the stuff or howling. I can't remember at what you were saying." And I just said, what do you do when they don't respond as well on a given night? And I know he'd been asked that before, but it was something that he wanted to pass on to me, and looked at me in my eyes and said, "There's always tomorrow."
Oh yeah.
So that's a Obi-Wan Kenobi moment, You've thought that, of course, right?
I have thought that. And by the way, it's never a good. It's like there's never a good version of that. It's always like, well, I'm doing this show again tomorrow. And it can be like, we should have had more time for that subject. There's many, many things it could be.
Or such tragedy has happened that you had to report, and you have to tell people. I know you want to go, and we've talked a long time, but I could talk to you forever.
This chair is actually tested for 8-hour sessions. So
well, this is good. So maybe we'll just continue. I have no limit.
You might recognize this chair.
What is the chair?
I'm not showing you enough of it, but during the OJ trial, which was about 150 years ago, there was this fancy office chair vendor in Los Angeles who saw the kind of clearly uncomfortable chairs that Judge Lancito and all the lawyers were sitting in, because they were those stupid wooden courtroom chairs for the lawyers. And the judge had one of those standard judge's chairs, which are actually not that comfortable, and they're not meant for like long rides. And so this vendor delivered for free this chair, not a version of this chair to the judge. The judge loved it. And then all, like F. Lee Bailey and all the lawyers and Johnny Cochran, they all wanted it. And so they delivered them, like 10 of them, to the lawyers on each side, And And it was like a couple of years after the trial. I'm always concerned about the comfort of office chairs because I'm looking for any excuse to not be able to work quite right, and I think it was actually probably when I got the West Wing job, I could finally afford the right office chair, and I immediately got the OJ trial chair and delivered right away. And so, yeah, this thing you can just
and it
do.
served him well. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the Heisman Trophy.
He himself had one of these chairs in the courtroom.
I mean, he got off from that chair, so I can only imagine what you're doing in it. I want to thank you also personally. I told my daughter Laura that I was going to be talking to you, and she said, he did the sweetest thing for me. I'll never forget it as long as I live. We were in New York and at a hotel, and we all were hanging out, and you weren't there, Dad, and he picked up our dinner. And that was, thank you. I mean, that's what family does for somebody, or just a dear, dear friend. And that's just, I'm glad you've made enough money that you can do things like that.
Well, I actually wasn't at the time. It was a tough stretch. And
do you want me to reimburse you?
No, it was so great because I saw the girls, over there, and I just loved doing it. I just loved, and I didn't tell them, or I just did it. And
well, here's your thank you, and we're lucky. We have wonderful daughters, so that's my priority. But I just, you know what? Being in quarantine, I just say what I feel. I just love you, Lawrence. I just do.
That's exactly my feeling. I can't say it.
Your feeling is that I love you. That Bob loves Lawrence.
I feel that you love me. Yes, I can feel it. It's zooming right through the Zoom thing to me.
But that's how I feel, and I'm not scared of it.
Let me just put it this way. I could not... I could not love you more.
So you can't. So this is the end. So you can't love me. We didn't say any more.
I tried, and I cannot love you more.
You're made the way you're made. You're entitled to be a real man about this. I'm the softie that's going. I want to express how I feel about people that I care about. And I'm just really happy that we had this conversation so people could hear it, because you have a lot of people that love you. And I can't love you anymore either, because, we have to.
I've got an awful lot that hate me. I've got millions that hate me. And
I do too. I do too. I have people that, when I was the family guy on the Full House and the video show, and then I did more and more stand-up, which I'd been doing for years before I did those family shows that were in your living room. But if you're in someone's living room doing one thing, they think that's what you're like. But I'm still a good person. I just did what I found funny, but maybe I went a little bit too blue at one point. But I'm not like that now. I can't wait to go out and do my new hour and a half of where I'm at. But it was very confusing for people. It's like, and it was a lot of hate.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of love, because they were going, oh man, I like stand-up Bob and not other Bob, but I like doing both. Why can't I be a good family father figure on one thing, or a good host of something that's not trying to say something lascivious? And then why can't I go do whatever the fuck I want to make people laugh, and not from cursing, just to be who I am also? I mean, I don't know. You probably want to do, I was going to say Broadway, but you came and saw me on Broadway. That's what a friend you are. You came and saw me in Hand to God.
That was so great. That was really
That's
fun.
a hell of a play. Well, I guess you have a life you want to get on with. You'll probably get out of your chair, right?
At some point, yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this.
I am desperately available. Put me on your list of desperately available. Or I'm available for last minute cancellations from major celebrities who you have lined up.
Well, I'll have read both books at that point.
Today we really just got through the high school years, so there's more.
Yeah.
There's more.
Well, I want to hear about Harvard and you weren't a Harvard Lampoon guy, right?
Yeah, I was a Harvard Lampoon guy. Yeah.
I got on honorary membership. BJ Novak honored me at Harvard at the Sanders Theater. And they put on almost a 2-hour show that started off clean and then turned filthy, and that's where I came in. And it was an honoring of me, and I got to see the stuff you're not supposed to see. And I'm an honorary member of that amazing place that I wasn't smart enough to get into that damn school.
So at Sanders Theater, when I was probably a freshman, I saw the guy who at that particular moment was, I think it was the moment when he was the hottest comedian in America, and that was Mr. Robert Klein.
Oh.
Yeah, remember that?
I do. I saw him at University of Pennsylvania. He was on the Ivy League tour.
Yeah,
and he was a pioneer. He was that New York comedian who really started. There was Alan King as the senior of him.
Yeah.
And then Robert, who Rosie Rose Garden still manages him, and Ray Romano. And Robert is out doing it, but not now, obviously. But he was amazing, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, coming off of that Alan King era, which overlapped with him, right? He was one of the very first who could get up there and talk to a hippie audience, and I mean, like, Alan King could not possibly have worked one of those college
No,
rooms.
It was a definitely generational change.
I loved those Alan King classical Ed Sullivan comedians. I thought they were fantastic, but nobody else my age did. Like, people just weren't, it was all about, you had to be hip, and Robert Klein absolutely was hip enough, more than hip enough.
Well, when he would sing "I Can't Stop My Leg" with a harmonica.
Oh boy.
Anybody out there, look that up. "I Can't Stop My Leg," and it's Robert Klein, and it's a blues song, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's so of that moment, right? This was not material from the 1950s, or it wasn't material from 2 years ago. It's from, this is today. That's today in America.
It's for everybody. It's for everyone. There's no one that wouldn't find that funny. It was pretty special.
I met him, I think once, and maybe once that I recall, in New York City, not that long ago, a few years ago. And it was one of those things where I just wished I could find the words for the awe that I have for him, and I couldn't, and so I didn't say much, and and.
Well, if you want to reach out to him, write me something and I'll send it over.
Yeah, I mean, I just wish.
you're not busy, really.
No, but can someone out there in the world please figure this out? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who has this experience and it doesn't have to be a famous person. It can be some great teacher you had, or it can be a person you admire hugely for whatever reason. I mean, for me, it's nurses and doctors who've been in hospitals that I've been in. I've never, ever been able to find the words of awe that I have for people when it's at that level.
Especially now. I mean, now it's like they're literally frontline heroes.
Someone should write a little book about how to do that. About, here's the way you do it. Here's the way, when you get that one moment in your life with Robert Klein where you say, I saw you at Sanders Theater at Harvard when I was a kid, and just somehow convey it.
I get stammered. When I've met some of my idols, I have screwed it up so badly. I was at Letterman and I was backstage with Johnny Cash. And you know what I said to him? I'm so stupid, because I was the first guest. And I went, why am I the first guest? He's Johnny Cash. This doesn't make any sense. So I told him that. I'm backstage in the dark, and he's like, he had an interesting gaze in his eye, trying to figure out either who I was or did he trust me. Right. And I said, I'm just a huge admirer of yours, and you should be on first. You're an icon. And then I don't think he had given that any thought, because he was going to be on the Letterman show, and the music act would go later, but he would also do a sit down because it was Johnny Cash. But I remember him staring at me. And he didn't hate me, but he was like reflecting on, oh, wait a minute, this idiot's right. I'm Johnny Cash.
Am I supposed to be depressed by this?
Right.
Be depressed by it. I'm glad he reminded me.
Oh my God! But I've done good things. Music legends are the ones that I always mess up with, because that for me is almost a pinnacle.
Well, isn't it? I mean, it's so hard to articulate to someone in music what they mean to you. because they don't come to you in words, they come to you in this other thing, and I mean, I had Paul McCartney come running up to me at Saturday Night Live party in 2012. Actually, I think it was probably right after the presidential election in 2012. I'd never seen him, and I knew he's a friend of Lauren's. I knew Lauren knows all those guys. And so I was sitting there, and then here's the McCartney entourage that's coming through. And he sees me from a distance, and he just kind of locks on me. And he's like, he's coming here. Like, he had to pass by this table. It's like, I realized, oh, he's coming here. Oh, that hand it's coming to me. It's stretching out to shake my hand and to tell me how important I was to him in getting him through the Barack Obama re-election campaign, and how afraid he was that Obama was going to lose. But then I always made him comfortable and reassured him and all. He's doing all this talking, about how important I was to him, for a year or something. And I'm just like, and everything, if you video this, I look like I'm taking this in stride. But the whole time I'm trying to think about, what can I possibly say to him? What can I say about what he means to me?
It's impossible.
Me, what can I do? And I feel the weight of every person who's come before me saying this to him. Right. And I feel like as a writer, I have to say the thing that stands out. I have to write the perfect thing to say to Paul McCartney in my one McCartney moment in my life, which will never come again. And that's, I got nothing. Nothing like, oh, thank you. Nice to meet you. It's like, I mean.
Yeah, because what you want to say is thank you for being a genius. Thank you for writing the best music that affected me.
Yeah.
And I did one good one with Roy Orbison. I was backstage at Letterman show, and I went over to him, and, his sight was pretty gone, I think, almost, but I knew he saw shadows or something. And I went over to him and I said, I just want to tell, it's Bob Saget. And he goes, oh, hi, man. So I was like, oh, he knows my name. I just want to tell you how much, how amazing I think you are. And I just love your music so much. Thank you for saying hi to me, or something like that. And then I went to the person right to his left, and I went, I just want to tell you how much I love your music and how much I think of you. And then I went to another person. I just want to tell you how much and he just started laughed out loud, because it was like the only time I treated an icon comedically.
But that's so great. That strikes me as the perfect version of that honor. That's just perfect.
That made me so happy to make him laugh. I mean,
to praise his talent with your talent. I mean, that's a perfect
I got lucky.
Yeah, you did, but that's a perfect thing.
And then I went up to Tom Petty once, and I said, and he just looked at me, and he had on his darkened shades, and he looked over them, and he went, I know, man. I know.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So I didn't have to say it, because he could tell he was that amazing. And my last one, which makes me a moron, is I went up to one of my personal heroes, Bruce Springsteen, and I saw his show on Broadway with my daughters and my wife, and we went backstage afterward, and there were only a couple people there. Patty was there, and his dentist and his wife and two young men. And, the Broadway backstage, it's tiny. You're meeting in the laundry room.
Yeah.
And I said, this is what I said. This is putting a foot down a throat and then wiggling your toes out your asshole. That's what I did, basically, to put it not graphically. I said to Bruce Springsteen, who I'd met before over a 25-year period, I said, I don't know how to say this. Please don't take it wrong. But it's meant to be a highest compliment. After what I've just seen, I don't know how to tell you that I can't believe you've grown even more.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But it is me giving a critique to someone that is another level of greatness. So it's interesting because I meant it as the hugest of compliments. I didn't think it through, that there's maybe ego involved in someone, telling someone you're amazing. It's like Dalai Lama, boy, you're great at this peaceful, proselytizing you do.
It sounds like a great compliment.
Well, he went like this. He went, "Oh, that's interesting. I never heard that one." And then he was talking to my daughters, who, when you meet them, what angels they are. So he wanted to talk to them because they're like literally winged beings. And then I got a laugh out of him. This is how narcissistic I am. I got a laugh out of him. That's a comic. Once you're a comic. Patty said, "We have to go, honey." And I said, "Okay, I'll be right there." And then he just kind of went, ah. He was probably still I think he was really thrilled that she did the cue. Here's a Post-it for you, Mr. Anderson.
By the way, have you noticed that whenever people run into you with your daughters, we all just want to talk to your daughters?
Yeah, I know not to take it anything but personally. I know I am a very fortunate man. So
they are such fun, those kids.
Well, they adore you, and so do I. And you don't have to respond. Just thank you for talking to me. This was really quite wonderful.
I just want to say that even, having watched you as long as I have, when I see you do this podcast, I think that you've grown. You've actually trying to get there.
That's interesting. That's interesting, man. Honey, we have to leave. Oh, okay, baby. Well, thank you. I can't wait to watch you any minute. You'll be on in hours, and thank you for giving me some of your valuable time, but I'm glad we got to talk.
This is so much fun.
Me too, for me. And so I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day. Enjoy your chair.
I will. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Lawrence. Lawrence O'Donnell. I just love that guy. And you can see he's crazy about me. No matter where you fall politically, I think if a person's a good person, it comes through. I happen to agree with a lot of how Lawrence feels about things, but even if I didn't, and I'll be having some guests soon on here that I don't share the same human beliefs or political beliefs, but I don't care. I just care if a person's a good person and they're open to a good conversation. But I just adore him. He's brilliant, and he's kind, and he's got a wonderful purpose in life. So that's the end of this incredibly unexpectedly long podcast, where he was like, "Hey, is it going to be an hour?" And it turns out to be almost 2 hours or something like that, maybe less. We'll chop off some. And what you want to do is, you want to subscribe or follow, and subscribe, rate, review. They got me to memorize that. It was like I was being interrogated. I learned that. And I'll be calling you guys. Look at the phone number up there. Leave a message. I'll be posting it on my Instagram stories and on Twitter when I'll be calling some of you nice people out there. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'm sending you my best. And I am here. Excuse me. I've been talking for 2 hours, and I burped up coffee from yesterday. Leave it in. Do not cut this out. I'm here for you. I'm for you. There was a comedian named Foster Brooks who would play a totally drunk person, and he would try to talk. That's what I just did for real. Anyway, I'm here for you, and so is my horrible gas bubble in my larynx. I want to thank Lawrence O'Donnell and all of you guys. Be well. Okay, this is something I like. It is. Stamps.com. Here's what I want to tell you. As we slowly adjust to a new normal, we still need to be smart about how we do business. And lucky for all of us, there's stamps.com to make things easier. And I use it, and I like it, because thousands of small business owners have discovered the benefits of stamps.com as well in recent months. And they've been able to keep their businesses running and avoid the crowds at the post office, all from their own computers. Don't we want to avoid those crowds? I do. You could wear a mask at home, but you get to print these things out right on your printer. With stamps.com, you can print postage on demand and avoid going to the post office. And you'll save money with discounted rates you can't even get at the post office. Can you get them there? No. There's no discounts there, but there are here. Stamps.com also offers UPS services with discounts up to 62% and no residential surcharges. This is not a small thing. Well, stamps are small, but not when you print them out because you got so many of them. Stamps.com brings all the mailing and shipping services you need right to your computer in the comfort of your home or office. Whether you're a small business sending invoices, an online seller shipping out products, or just working from home and you need to mail stuff as we do, Stamps.com can handle it all with ease. Simply use your computer to print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send. Once your mail is ready, just leave it for your mail carrier, schedule a pickup, or drop it in a mailbox. It's that simple. And like I said, with Stamps.com, you get great discounts too, with 5 cents off every stamp and up to 62% off USPS and UPS shipping rates. Stamps.com is a no-brainer, saving you time and money. Anything that's a no-brainer is good for me. I have no brain right now. I need Stamps.com to mail stuff. I can't go to the post office. I have no brain. Right now, my listeners get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. We're all looking for that. No long-term commitment. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Bob. That's B-O-B. I don't know how they came up with that. That's Stamps.com and enter Bob. Don't enter Bob as a verb, but enter it on the computer. Well, it's still a verb. Just go to Stamps.com and enter Bob.